Hello and welcome. You're watching We the People. I'm Rishika Barua. The grand festival of democracy, the 2024 general election is underway. The proverbial red carpet has been rolled out for the voter. And while there are some raring to go, some aren't. I'm talking today about the urban voter. Of the 50 parliamentary constituencies that recorded the lowest voter turnout in the 2019 election, 17 were urban. 30 crore eligible voters did not cast their vote in the last general election. The Election Commission says that voter turnout across most metros was lower than the national average of 67.4% in the last election. And the ongoing 2024 election, the signs are ominous. For instance, according to official data, a little over 1.8 crore first-time voters are on the electoral rolls for the ongoing polls. But the population size of this demographic is approximately 4.9 crores. So that means that only 37% of the eligible first-time voters have registered to vote in this election. Let's look at the state elections where the story hasn't been different. In the 2023 Karnataka polls, Bangalore South, an urban constituency, recorded an abysmal 47.5%. The state overall saw a 73% voter turnout. In the 2022 Gujarat polls, the industrial town of Gandhidham recorded the lowest turnout in the state. The difference between rural and urban votes in Surat, for instance, was a glaring 25%. A similar story has played out in Shimla in the 2022 Himachal polls, and similar stories have actually played out state after state as well. Now, why should we care about those who don't care to vote? Well, India is a rapidly growing country. And it is expected that by 2030, nearly 50% of our population will be living in urban areas. So this trend indeed is worrying. Now, the Election Commission is cognizant of the matter. They're trying to do their bit to woo voters, including addressing a media conference this time around on voter apathy. The Election Commission says it's tried to improve logistics, tried to improve outreach, be it RWA, social media influencers. There is a very conscious bid to make the process more accessible, more attractive and even easy, including, process for first-time voters to register online, change of address of voter ID, something that you can do online now, so you don't have to travel far and wide to actually cast your vote. The question is, will all this work? Or do we have a more fundamental problem to address first? On We the People tonight, we ask, why is voting not fashionable in urban India, or rather fashionable enough in urban India? Is it privilege? Is it apathy? Or is it just political indifference? No easy answers, but joining us in the studio today, S.Y. Qureshi, former Election Commissioner of India. We also have Neerja Chaudhary, senior journalist, Amitabh Tiwari, political analyst. And joining us from Hyderabad, Professor Nageshwar. He is, of course, a political analyst, MLC, and formerly with the Osmania University. And we have Esha Paul, a documentary filmmaker and an urban voter who's been spreading awareness about the ease of voting on social media. I want to begin this show. We also have a young audience. Let me introduce them. Students from Delhi University and from Amity University. A lot of them first-time voters, young voters. I want to begin though, Esha, by asking you, why is it just not fashionable for urban India to vote? You're a voter yourself. You've talked about it on social media. How do you see this?
Urban India is quite big. We're not a monolith. We have different socio-economic classes living in urban areas. And I think it's hard to pinpoint on what particularly, but I can talk about my case studies. I do see that when I posted a social media post about how you can easily change your address. I've been living in Mumbai for 7 years, but this is the first time I've been able to change my address so that I can vote from here and not from my permanent residence. It became sort of like a social contagion, a little nudge to show my friends that it was easy. And the response from them was heartening because they all wanted to know how to do it. And again, these are people who are from the media background, are working in media, journalism sort of lines of work. So you expect folks to be already aware of these changes. But the thing is that we do have a huge lack of information, both about the election process and also how to enroll to vote, when and where you would end up voting. And I know that there were talks about remote voting for a while. But the thing is, whenever it comes to voting, at least for the urban Indian, it is hard to find information. We do spread a lot of information amongst students because they're first-time voters.
Yes.
But we forget the ones who are come later, who are migrants who might have moved like me.
Okay, so you're saying it's a combination of logistics as well as just lack of information, which one could attribute to indifference and or apathy, if I can put it that way. But before we talk more about what people are thinking, I just want to break down some of the details. And Mr. Qureshi, if I can begin by asking you, you're the expert here. What more can the Election Commission do? I mean, if you look at how easy the process has become online, and we have graphics that we're putting out on our screens on how people can register for the first time, how people can change their address, all of these processes have become quite seamless. What more can be done in order to just make people come out and vote?
Yeah, actually you have raised 2 points. One is the voter apathy, particularly of the urban so-called educated people, and the other is about youth. We try to deal with both the issues. When I joined the Election Commission, when I saw 20% turnout, 25% turnout in metros and big cities, we were concerned.
Yes.
And at that time, the solution being offered was that we should have compulsory voting. We said nothing doing compulsion and democracy don't go together. We should do it through education and motivation. I have met a lot of opposition that educating voters is not our job. Our job is to conduct election. I fought and we set up a voter education division exactly for this. And our very first program was in Delhi. At that time there was a very popular song, Papu Can't Dance Sala. Something. So using that, we made our own parody. We created our own hero who can even dance. He is very good. His only fault was he doesn't vote. So we wanted to lampoon him.
Okay.
And as a result of that, there was 14% increase in turnout. Same people who were not only not voting, but sitting in their drawing room criticizing the politicians and the government,
Yes,
when they had not bothered to go there, same people were showing their finger, look, I have voted. So they realize that
Yes,
not voting is a shameful activity.
Okay.
So we changed it into the desirable behavior.
All right.
So voter education is something we have been doing pretty well, and we need to strengthen a bit more.
Amitabh Tiwari, if I can ask you, as someone who understands the space, you look at these numbers very closely. There's been a shift in as far as trends are concerned. Till the 80s, it was the opposite. There were more urban, so-called educated people coming out to vote, and after the 80s, the trend has changed, where you see rural India coming out in much larger numbers as opposed to urban India, and the urban voter now really under the scanner as to why you're quick to criticize, you're quick to tweet, but you're not quick to come out and cast your vote. Why do you think that is?
See, essentially it is a mixture of apathy and indifference. See, largely the rural population is dependent upon the governments. They are beneficiaries of one or the other scheme. In urban India, the middle class in India, since we do not have any social security, the dependence of the middle class on government is less, apart from infrastructure projects. So people feel कि मेरे life में government का कोई role है नहीं, कुछ कर नहीं सकती government. So मैं vote देके क्या करूँ? That is number one. Number two, you mentioned about a place like Bangalore. In a place like Bangalore, what has happened is that people have seen the governments of all the parties, the JDS, the Congress and the BJP, still the real problems of the city have not been solved by any government. So it is also a question mark on the ability of the governments or the will of the political will of the governments to solve real issues or urban issues. And that has led to a lot of apathy. In any urban center today, there 50% of the population lives in slums and 50% in gated societies or buildings.
Yes.
Slums are migrants largely. If they do not have voting cards, they do not vote. Even if you do some campaign and they do get registered for voting, they tend to prefer to vote in their permanent address or cities. So all these things have complicated or led to indifference and apathy.
It's interesting because you've essentially raised an argument of privilege as well, which is the disconnect with the political process, which also does in a certain sense stem from privilege, whether you like it or not. Professor Nageshwar Rao, if I can come to you at the moment, Hyderabad had recorded among the lowest voter turnouts in the last election. You're from Hyderabad. It was about 44-45%, if I'm not wrong, as compared to the national average. That's abysmal. Why do you think that is? This divide of these two Indias, even urban India, the percentages that we're actually seeing in urban India is also mainly because of, like Amitabh Tiwari said, the people who don't live in the gated communities.
Well, if you look at the urban India also, we find a difference. There is the voting percentages are relatively high in assembly elections compared to the parliament elections, and the voting percentages are relatively high in the local bodies elections compared to the assembly elections. That shows the social distance between the political system, political structures, and the voters contribute to this apathy among the urban voter. That's number one. Number two, the urban middle class do not find any tangible deliverables from the political system. You don't have a political party providing an exclusive manifesto for middle class. So you have a lot of freebies to the poorer sections, but hardly you find a middle class manifesto any political parties actually releasing. So that's the second factor. Third factor is, well, the voter inducement. Well, in the villages, there's a lot of distribution of money. So that is relatively much more difficult in the urban settings, especially in the affluent communities, middle class communities.
So you're saying there's no motivation. You're saying there's no motivation to come out and vote.
No, there's no motivation. The fourth factor is, well, the urban dwellers do not depend on the governance structures and the political structure for most of these things. Whereas in the villages, they depend on the political parties, politicians, the local representatives for their daily needs. So therefore, there is a dependency syndrome in the rural areas that drives the voter to the voter. And the fifth one is there is no moral and social pressure. In a village, if you don't vote, the neighbor will come and say, "Are kya, mar gaya kya? Ab kyun nahi vote dale?" But in urban areas, you do not even know who is your neighbor in the apartment. So forget about motivating others to vote. So the social pressure, the peer pressure is there. And sixth one is there are a lot of chaos and confusion in the voter list. There are a lot of overlapping, there are a lot of the sanitization of the voter list are still not perfect. So as a result, what happens is there may be the actual percentages may be much more higher also. If we remove these overlapping voters. For example, in Hyderabad, there is a large number of voters from the regions which now constitute Andhra Pradesh. So this time the elections are on the same day. There is a huge exodus of people from Hyderabad to the Andhra Pradesh state to vote. So these are all, still people are voting in two places also. So the electoral, the voter list needs to be sanitized.
Well, many would say that's a good argument for one nation, one poll as well. But I think you raise an important point on disconnect. Nija Chaudhary, as someone who's covered so many elections, you really have your eyes and ears trained to the ground. What do you think is the main reason? I know it's not a simple answer, but what is it really going to take to motivate, quote unquote, those living in the gated communities? How are we going to solve this politics of privilege that we are seeing? What is it going to take?
Well, the so-called gated communities, the educated urban intelligentsia, they choose to be apolitical at one level. And, so many young people, bright, thinking, it's not that they don't read, they do. And somewhere they've internalized all the politicians are the same. Whoever comes to power is not going to do anything for me. And there is a cynicism there. And why I know from the 80s to now, slowly how the white kurta pajama clad figure has become a dirty word for this class of people. Now, and of course it was Rajiv Gandhi's premiership that he reduced the voting age to 18, which was a very big step. And I think the first time voter is still very, on the whole, more idealistic than when you go into your 20s and 30s. But what is the answer to it? Except, as he said, to kill politicians, it's a chicken and egg situation. The people will say, the politicians are not going to do anything for me. And politicians say, this middle class, urban based voter, ये तो वोट ही नहीं करेंगे, वैसे ही नहीं आते हैं. So why should I, pay attention to their needs?
That's interesting. I also really appreciate the argument that you made about how politics is a dirty word for a certain section. They just don't want to, get into it. But I also feel at some level, I think the reason why that the politics of privilege argument was very interesting is because, in urban India, there's the logistics of it are also going to be very interesting to see because people are not used to standing in queues for anything anymore. I think the last time people stood in queues was perhaps demonetization. everything is delivered at your doorstep. Those are the privileges of urban India, of metropolitan cities. Briefly, before we move on to what more voters have to say, do you think that's something that can be addressed in the future?
Well, no, if you think that we should provide
Doorstep voting, do you think that's something that can happen in the future?
Like internet voting, I don't agree with that at all, because in any case voting day is then officially given holiday.
Yes.
So instead of just staying at home or going to Khandala, they should come out and vote, because you have been given a holiday, paid holiday to go. So their indifference actually is not defensible at all, because if they do not move their finger, how will we get better government?
Yes.
They have no business to then sit down in their drawing room and complain.
Well, that's the reason we're having this whole conversation, hopefully, so that it motivates some people to work. But I want to take it to young voters. We have urban voters. We have your issues. What do you want to say?
Thank you, ma'am. My name is Amrendra and I have to share my case here. So, ma'am, I applied for my voter ID card well before UP legislative poll, last UP legislative polls, and I was really excited to give my first vote. I got my voter ID card, but after 4 months when voter list came, my name was missing in the voter list.
Okay.
So I approached to Election Commission to seek clarification and response, but I haven't got any response. So my case highlights a very concerning issue that it's not always because of urban apathy that we don't vote or that leads to voter absenteeism, but it's also a systematic failure of Election Commission.
Okay,
or a system that is running.
logistics is part of it. I think that's a fair point. Yes.
So hello, I'm Ekta. My father is in the army, so he is always out of the place where he's a registered voter. I have not seen him vote. Similarly, I have not seen my mother vote क्योंकि वो पापा के साथ बाहर रह रही हैं. And it takes a lot कि you just go back to your home place just to cast a vote. So
Yeah.
Okay, so what more? I'll take some of those questions. Yes, very quickly.
We all are aware of the phenomena of declining voter participation during election in India's information technology hub, which is Bangalore. And we all know that Bangalore has most educated people, but still the ratio of urban voter are very less. Last year recorded only 54.8% people have appeared in the vote, and which was even lesser than the person appeared in 2018. So what all are the reasons?
What are the reasons? Okay, I think
I
we've
want to
addressed a
add
lot
up
of
on
that.
the same, that does the social economic status of urban population affects their disconnection between the political practice.
I think we've addressed at least in part what you've said, but you want to take on the question on logistics. Can we do better?
I want to answer this question about the army.
Yes.
In fact, the defense personnel are allowed a special facility. They are given various options. They can vote at the permanent address. They can vote at the place of posting. And in fact, the only people who are allowed a concession of proxy voting is the army. But surprisingly, the defense ministry has not popularized it. We called defense ministry officials several times that why did that people don't even know. Once we went to the border, Uri, the entire commission, and we talked to 200 Jawans keeping the officers away. What is it that you want? They said we want to vote in our home place and we want to use proxy voting. Why is it not being used? This is the facility available only to the defense forces, and it should be popularized. I mean, it should take steps.
Okay. Yes.
I think the time is ripe for online voting to be allowed. Aadhaar based, OTP based online voting. If everything we are doing on the basis of digital India, we are talking about digital India, everything, our lakhs of bank transactions we are doing on a daily basis, they are all secure. So how it is possible
at the time when we are having this whole conversation around VVPATs, etc., I think it's very interesting what you're
it's
saying.
An option.
And Professor Qureshi was vehemently waving his hand saying no.
Yeah. In fact, I vehemently disagree with you because we are an IT superpower, but deliberately, consciously, for two non-technical reasons in the first place. One, if internet voting is allowed, somebody comes to your house with a gun, give me your computer, we can't protect you there. Or comes with an envelope of 5,000 rupees, give me your computer, I'll vote for you, we cannot guard against that. That is one. And secondly, banks and other everything, we know every day that there are three news items of bank fraud. Entire bank can be looted. It will be reimbursed by the insurance company, but we cannot allow the election to get looted. Therefore, there is no question when a simple EVM is being questioned till today in the Supreme Court today.
Yes.
So, do you think internet voting will be acceptable to the people? So, no question.
It will be acceptable to the people because the young India is doing everything on the internet. It will increase voter turnout and participation.
Esha, do you want to come in here, because you had a very interesting point of view as well, about the fact that we're just not used to this whole culture of going and standing in these long queues. Do you think that an idea like that is more appealing, at least in terms of logistics? Professor Qureshi has of course highlighted a whole lot of red flags on how it just doesn't work practically.
There are also red flags on voting in person. We do know that that can be incentivized. There have been stories about people who will sort of offer alcohol, food, money for votes.
Yes, of course.
So if
it's all documented and is being seized in large numbers. I mean, this election has seen the highest ever seizures before even the the election's actually been properly underway as compared to last year. So you're absolutely right, Professor Qureshi. That's a valid point. You're seeing the proverbial gun being held to your head or your vote being bought even otherwise.
Yeah.
It's
there is another angle. There's another angle to this, and that is the women voter. If you make it online, there's every chance the men folk saying, we will vote for you. It's very easy to do. The computer is in the house.
There you are.
Now, increasing number of women are coming out to vote. The same could happen with Dalits.
Yes.
So I think I would personally go for even slightly lower voting turnout and don't have your election rigged than to take that risk.
I think both of you raise very fair points, and you've obviously had many more years of experience under the sun than a lot of us asking those questions, at least me asking those questions or the young audience. But having the option, it doesn't have to be compulsory, but do you think having the option of a more of ease of doing business in terms of voting will work in the future, maybe? If we can make it more airtight, if thought can go into that process.
Well, that kind of security which is required for election, banks are looted every day. Our accounts are being hacked every day.
Yes.
But we cannot afford that to happen to the election. It is too precious. Therefore, and the fact that even simple EVM, which is a standalone machine, is questioned till today.
I want to bring back Professor Nageshwar also into the conversation. What do you think it's going to take to change the state of affairs, to get more people from urban India? We've had a whole vehement conversation about taking the vote online, a lot of strong views for and against that. How do you look at it?
Rishika, the cardinal principle of free and fair election, which form part of the basic structure of the constitution, is the trust of the voter. So if the voter doesn't trust, then there is no meaning of free and fair elections. I'm not going into the debate whether online voting is foolproof or not. Fundamentally people are not even, there is suspicion on the EVMs. So it's extremely difficult in our country to trust online voting. So the time has not yet ripe for online voting in India. In a country like United States, Donald Trump questioned the very election verdict. So trust is very important in building a democracy. So there are other problems. The problems is not in terms of the logistics. The problem is in terms of politics. No politics is never a substitute to bad politics. And today's voter apathy is something to do with the bad politics also. So the people's cynicism with the political system. That is what there is an incrementalism in public administration. Political system doesn't provide qualitatively radical choices for the voters. So we have to address all these problems. You can do many more experiments. For example, you can involve scouts and guides and NCC and NSS, whereas the young kids go around their colony, go around their apartments, motivate their uncles and aunts to vote. That creates the social pressure. You may perhaps have a mobile EVM, mobile polling booth, which goes around in the polling station.
Sure.
So that's not an impossible task compared to the online voting. You can perhaps have a public transport available in a ubiquitous manner throughout the polling day. The election commission, the government can procure all the private vehicles
fair bit of that
and keep them at the disposal.
School buses are taken and a lot of public transport is made available. A fair bit of that happens, but again, how much of that is happening in urban India, where we really need to up the voter percentage, is of course the big question. We're out of time. It's been a very fascinating conversation. I think the fact that the vote isn't compulsory is in the true nature of democracy. The fact that it isn't online yet is in the nature of sanctity And I think it is a privilege and honor that we have, that we can go and cast our vote, and we must absolutely use it. We've tried to give you information on the fact that there is flexibility, there is accessibility. You need to go onto the Election Commission website, download the form, change your address. All of those things have been made possible. Educate yourselves if the Election Commission hasn't successfully gotten the message to you, but you must definitely go out and vote. On that note, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you all very much for joining us on this edition of We the People. Good night and thanks for watching.